All right, so we are recording. Welcome everybody to our Bulletproof Your Immune System webinar. And I want to share a story with you. Albert Einstein was teaching a class and he was giving the test to the class, and the students in the class started to look at the test, and one of them raised their hand and said, "Dr. Einstein, this looks like the same questions that you asked last year on this same test." And sure enough, Dr. Einstein responds and says, "Yes, indeed, it is the same questions, but the answers are different because you have evolved. The answers are different this year." And so tonight we are going to be answering the same old questions that have been asked for thousands of years, probably, or at least decades, on what do I need to do to be healthy? You know, what are the things that I need to do that will allow me to minimize my risk of being affected by the next big virus that comes through, minimizing my chances of getting sick. How do I minimize the chances of being killed by the virus? How do I stay healthy? So what are the things that we need to do? And again, the answers are different now. So if we asked this question years ago, we would have had one set of answers, but now the answers are different. And that's what I want to share with you this evening. Of course, you could just be listening to the mainstream media right now and getting the same old answers to the same old questions, or I can actually share with you, instead of stirring up more fear and uncertainty, I can share with you exactly what we do know of how we can bulletproof our immune system. So I acknowledge you for taking action here. And I know that you are action takers because you are here on this webinar wanting to learn. And so I love this image of the phoenix rising from the ashes, because, oh boy, what a year we've been through. And in this year, there's a lot we've had to deal with, so many stresses. And people kept asking this question of, when are we going to come out of it? Who is going to come along that's going to save us from this? And what I can see pretty clearly is there's nobody coming to save us. There's nobody coming to save us, but we can save ourselves. We have to take action ourselves in order to get our best outcomes for bulletproofing our immune systems. So I want you to understand, I'm going to share with you the exact things that I do for myself and that I teach all of my practice members on how to bulletproof the immune system, so that not only will it allow you to feel better and to be in less fear, less concern, but also to function better and to dramatically minimize the chances of being hit by other diseases or needing to get onto medications or have surgeries. Like, what you're going to learn tonight is not just for being strong against a virus. It's actually for improving the health of your entire life. But it's specifically, I will focus on the immune system as well. So, you know, I've been studying health for over 40 years and probably helped over 10,000 people get their health back. So I want to share with you tonight five areas where you can take control. 4 of them will impact your immune system. 1 of them controls your immune system. So which one do you think is the most important? Okay, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. And you will also understand exactly why it is the most important one. All right, so again, just stay engaged with you here. Get out your piece of paper, write down the gems for you, and let me know what the nuggets are that you have from this webinar tonight. Just put it in the chat box. If you got something that was valuable, just write down nugget and then whatever the topic was, a word or two, so I know when I review this, what were the things that people got the most from. So I love this concept of a phoenix rising from the ashes. Really, the phoenix is saving itself. Everything that it needs, it already has, and it's rising up from the ashes. Now, I want to share with you my first experience I ever had in my whole life about this idea of having a bulletproof immune system. When I was 13 years old, this picture is actually when I was 16 years old, but 3 years before that, when I was 13 years old, my dad had gone off to chiropractic school, and he came back to a sick little girl, right? He came back he went to another state for school. And when he came home on his first vacation, I had strep throat. I don't know if any of you have ever had strep throat, but you know, it's so hard to swallow, painful. My throat was all swollen. And so my mom had taken me to the pediatrician and we had gotten a prescription for penicillin. Well, I remember that pill, I couldn't swallow anything, never mind pills. So I didn't take the medication. And my dad comes home and he said, oh, let's just check your spine and nervous system. And I said, okay, Dad. And he gives me my first chiropractic adjustment. I will never forget it. It was incredible. Well, after that, a couple hours later, I felt like I could swallow more easily and my throat didn't hurt as much. And pretty soon I just was healing right up. And I asked my dad, wow, how does that work? You adjust me there and now I get so much better. And he said, yeah, just needed to turn the power on so that your body could heal itself. And that stuck with me. I never forgot that. And I always understood, wow, my body has all this power. And as long as it can express itself, wow, I can be this I felt like it was a superpower that I had. And so from that, over the 40 years that I've been studying health, it has led me to this sense of this vision that I have, that I envision a world where the natural state is extraordinary health. I really do. I see that capacity in people. So when I encounter someone, I'm looking for, well, what is getting in the way of this person expressing that potential that they have? And so that comes from when I was 13 years old. That's when that all started. So let's talk about this conversation that is happening right now around concerns about the immune system. And here's the thing. Everyone in this cultural conversation seems to be focused on the strength of the virus, but no one is focused on the strength of the host. And that's where I want to change the conversation, because I think that's actually where the problem is that we're forgetting that we have all this potential in us, or maybe we just didn't know that we did. And we have to now figure out, how do we actually maximize the strength that each individual person can have with their immune system. So remember that we used to be the super species on the planet. When you think about it, we were the only species that could literally travel anywhere on the planet and figure out not just how to survive, but to thrive. Every other species had its environment and its climate and its food that it had to make sure it had that, and it couldn't stray away from that. But we actually have that adaptability to be able to go anywhere. So we have been the super species on the planet, but modern man, actually, we have become the sickest species on the planet. So our evolution, something's happened, right? And the truth is that our genetics actually have not changed that much, but something else has changed. And so although we are now the sickest species on the planet, part of the problem is we're still acting as though we're Superman and that we can get away with anything that we want. We were born superheroes, but we have become weak. And I want to really highlight this idea that we have these superpowers, but we have become weak. The problem is not that we have this badass virus in town. The problem is that we no longer are the badasses that we were designed to be. So we have that potential there, but it is not expressing itself. So why is that? Let's look at the formula for health. We know that there's three aspects: genetics, what you inherit from your ancestors. And if you are here today, then you come from a long line of successful human beings behind you. And so you have this genetic potential that has been given to you. And yet, what is it that will impact our genetic potential? What is it that will upregulate or downregulate and determine how our genes are expressing themselves? There's two things: lifestyle and environment. Those are the things. And so now what happens if our lifestyle or our environment goes sideways? How is that going to impact how our genes are going to express? Well, here's what's happening. So this is the global obesity trends among girls and boys. And we can see from 1975 or so, moving up to about 2015, holy smokes, this is skyrocketing. Like, look at the inflection of this. And this is worldwide. This is global. This is not just in the US. This is worldwide. We are seeing obesity. And the next generation is in trouble because it is accelerating earlier and earlier in our youth and in our youngsters. And so it can have devastating implications for their health as they move into adulthood. If you look at the obesity as one of the links to severe coronavirus disease, the studies are showing that it is the #1 factor for having a poor outcome. And it's because obesity is known to cause chronic low-grade inflammation, and lots of pro-inflammatory cytokines are circulating around in obese people. And that is what then plays out with the worst COVID-19 outcomes. And there was a study in China that showed that 88% of the patients who died were either overweight or obese. So the link to chronic disease, it's well known. Even when swine flu came through, it showed also people with obesity were more vulnerable to infectious diseases. But the studies also show that they don't get the same protection from vaccinations either. And so that's a problem, because people think that that is going to be the solution for them. But it turns out that no, the solution is to address the obesity. And that's what's going to make those people healthier overall, which is going to actually give them much more protection than trying to rely on a vaccination for those folks. If we look here, we can see that on the list on the left-hand side, it shows the highest rates of obesity. And look at, there's the United States, number 12. And we are actually the only industrialized nation in the top 25 here. So significant that what our outcomes are going to be because of that. And even in New York University, the scientists found that obesity was the single biggest chronic factor in the hospitalizations that occurred. So look at diabetes. I mean, here, these trends also show the same thing as the obesity. And so we can see this parallel trends that are happening. Well, people have never been sicker, and we can see it over and over again. And this was a very disturbing quote from the CDC in 2009. For the first time in the history of man, children born after the year 2000 are not expected to live as long as their parents. Wow, right? So we can see that there has been this trajectory of us having a more, greater and greater longevity. And now there's been this trajectory of having greater and greater chronic illness. And where they intersect, we start to see that impacts longevity, so that children are not being expected to live as long as their parents. So, and that's from the year 2000 on. It took us 9 years to identify that this was actually a trend. So very disturbing. And so obesity is the linchpin to chronic disease here. And it accounts for 86% of our $1 trillion healthcare burden can be attributed to lifestyle diseases like obesity and smoking. So remember, oh, and here's again, another very important graph. The overall prevalence of chronic disease in the US, look at how it's just going straight up. And look at the projections. It's not expected to go down unless we do something different. So if we keep doing the same things, this is what we can expect. And it's just going to be worse outcomes. And what happens next year when the next virus comes through, and then a year after that, and the next one comes through? We just have to start changing the health of the entire population and getting the entire population into accessing the superheroes, the superpowers that they have. So let's look at that. We were born superheroes, but we become weak. The problem is not, again, that we have this badass virus in town. It's that we are not as badass as we were designed to be. Now, I will tell you that this year, I actually had 2 family members who died this year, and they were in that category of having obesity as a concern and the chronic illnesses that accompany that, with heart disease and COPD and asthma. And so they were in a weakened state, and they didn't die from COVID, but they died from the stresses around everything else that was happening with COVID. So the isolation and the not getting the medical care that they needed. And so it was pretty tragic. And so, this, I just want to make it real for you, because maybe you also know somebody that has been struggling, whether it's a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a neighbor, or maybe it's you. Maybe you've been struggling this year and you want to know, what can I do to actually bulletproof my immune system? So this really is about you. And I want to just recognize that, and that we all may have been touched by folks that have struggled this year. And so what can we do to help those folks as well? If they are still with us, what can we do? And if they have passed, how can we honor that there was some lessons there that we could take and we could do better with what we have. So let's take a look at how does your immune system work? Well, I want to show you some examples of how we literally do have these superpowers, this innate intelligence that we were born with, that you don't have to earn this, you don't have to train this, you don't have to work for this, it just is there. So breast milk is one of these awesome superpowers that we have. And so we know that there is a whole communication that happens when a baby is breastfeeding. Just the act of suckling actually communicates information through the saliva to the mother so that her breast milk actually produces the exact concentration of ingredients that that baby needs that day. So I want to show you something extraordinary. This is looking at two collections of breast milk. The right-hand one was pumped from the same mom after a night of breastfeeding a feverish baby. And so you can see the before and after. When the baby was feverish, that mama made this amazing milk that was loaded and very specific for what the baby's needs were that day. Isn't that amazing? That is a superpower. And so we have that. That's why it's so important to be breastfeeding our babies as much as we can. And we know that when babies are born, their gut wall is actually very porous. There's a lot that gets through. In an adult, we would call it leaky gut, but in a baby, it's designed to take as much from that breast milk as possible and get it into the body. And so it is such a perfect design. It's permeable until maybe about 2 years old. And that's right about the time when kids start to get their teeth, which means they're now ready to start eating other types of food. And that's when the lining of the gut starts to develop the tighter junctions. And that way, the baby that would have been jump-starting its immune system with the breast milk is already developing its own immune system. And so it's ready to eat on its own and start to get the nutrients so that it can start to build its own immune system and build its own tissue and give its cells exactly what it needs. So wow, that's another superpower, is that this gut wall is set up in the beginning to be permeable, but then after a while to no longer be permeable. It's a perfect design. Of course, we'd get into trouble if the gut wall was permeable as an adult. And that's one of the things that could impact your immune system. So we're actually going to cover what are the ways that you can actually address that if that is true. And I'll show you how it actually relates to COVID as well. So T killer cells are another superpower that we have. They find and kill cancer cells. They are a superpower. And we know that the studies actually show that the T cell immunity is one of the ways that we actually have a lot of cross immunity. That if we have encountered, it's not an antibody, but it's another part of our immune system that is very broad and generalized. So if we get a cold, our body says, whoa, here comes a cold virus, and we don't need an antibody for that cold virus. We just blast it and take care of it. And that's through our T cell immunity. And so if we have seen a coronavirus cold in the past, now when the current coronavirus shows up, a different variation, or even some of the other variations that are showing up as well, how it's changing and morphing, if we actually have that T cell immunity already in our bodies, we actually have cross immunity, is what the studies are showing. So maybe 30 to 50% of the population actually has cross immunity already to any new coronavirus that comes up, and variations as well. So that's a superpower. Fever is a superpower because it heats up to kill off the pathogen, but we survive, right? Look at that design. We could actually change the temperature in our body, and we have the flexibility and adaptability to heat up so the virus can't survive, but we can survive. And then once we've handled that job, we self-regulate right back down to the healthy, normal temperature. And I would just actually say that fever actually would be a healthy, normal, high temperature for that situation, because that's your body going to work. What's also interesting is when we have a fever, it actually will cause the frequency, the vibration of the bone cells to heat up, and that actually liberates calcium. And as soon as we get enough calcium, our immune system will work better to take care of all the work it needs to do. So if you have a fever, if you take some very bioavailable calcium, I like calcium lactate for that, then that actually helps the fever to come down faster because we're actually giving our body what our bodies need. And the fever is trying to get us what we need by liberating more calcium for us to use in that moment. Superpower. Vomiting is awesome, right? Maybe not comfortable or convenient, but it is awesome because it is the body identifying a toxin and then getting it out as fast as possible. Superpower, right? So what are the implications of us getting weak, right? If this is all if we don't have our superpowers working for us and we get weak, what might happen? Well, it might affect us, but in the last year, what we realized is if our immune system get weak, the whole world can shut down. The whole world shut down. Stay at home, wash your hands, no hugging or high fives, hope and pray for a vaccine. That is the message that has been drummed into us. And I keep thinking to myself, when is the message going to change to strengthen the host? Strengthen the host. So although those procedures, those strategies may keep us safe, they do nothing to actually build our health. And so that's what I want to focus our conversation on, right? I mean, is that the best that we got, right? We spend $2 trillion a year on healthcare, and the best we have is now put double masks on. That doesn't build health. What we really need is to build health in our entire population, especially those that are vulnerable, right? Those of us that are healthy, we can withstand what's going on. But if we're really going to protect the vulnerable, we need to get them healthier rather than isolating them. So the world shut down, hard stop, period, not just a town or a state, the world. And it shut down because a segment of our population was vulnerable. So clearly, I want to acknowledge that. We do have people in our community that are vulnerable, but it's time to change the conversation. And we need to stop focusing on the strength of the virus and start focusing on the strength of the host, because there's going to be another badass virus that comes along. So just getting through this one is not the solution. A vaccine for this one is not going to be the solution, the long-term solution for everybody. We need to get everybody stronger. And so it's time to focus now on getting stronger so you won't be weak, so the people you love won't be weak. Who's with me on this, right? Does this make sense to you? So how did we get so weak? How did this happen? If we have this potential that we've inherited, what happened? How did we lose it? I think there are 3 reasons why we've lost it. The first is personal responsibility, right? People just have stopped taking personal responsibility for their health. They're asking the question, who's going to come save me? Who is responsible for your health? I know that I'm responsible for my health. You are responsible for your health, right? You are responsible for your family's health. So we all need to take back control and influence, because we need that to be healthy. We need to take that. When we feel like we don't have control, that actually impacts our health as well. So taking back control means taking back that personal responsibility. Who is in charge of you? Who's responsible for your health? Is it your doctor? Is it your spouse? Is it your mom? Is it your accountant, your insurance company? Like, who makes those decisions of what you're going to do about your health? I hope it's not the government. Is it the World Health Organization? Who is it, right? No, it's you, right? So the personal responsibility is key, all right? The number 3 reason, I'm going to tell you later. And I'm putting that here now. I didn't skip number 2. I actually put it in like this because it's actually one of the most important ones. So I don't want you to forget it, but I'm going to tell it to you later. The number 2 reason is we have lowered our expectations of health. We've lowered our expectations of health. We've normalized weak immune systems and chronic disease. We've even changed the definition of health. Check this out, what I mean by this. So a lot of people think of sickness and health as kind of a simple toggle back and forth between healthy and sick. Oh, I was sick on Monday and Tuesday, and then I was healthy on Wednesday. The reality is this: most people are spending most of their lives not necessarily being sick, but also not necessarily being healthy. There's something else here. There's not sick. Okay, I want you to take this in. This is really important. If you don't get this, then you're going to miss how you can actually get your immune system as strong as possible. So remember that being not sick means you don't have any diagnosis, you're asymptomatic, but you're not necessarily healthy. So people, unfortunately, are spending their lives toggling between sick and not sick rather than being healthy. And the other problem is that they're calling not sick, they're calling that healthy because there aren't symptoms that are part of it. So there is a difference between being sick and not sick. And there is a difference between being sick and diagnosed and sick and not diagnosed, or sick with symptoms and sick with being asymptomatic, right? So there's a difference between that, as well as a difference between not sick and healthy. We need to have a better definition here than just not sick, though, because if we use the wrong definition for healthy, then we're never going to find our way out of this, because we're going to be thinking, oh, I don't have any symptoms, so I must be healthy, when actually you are in a vulnerable state. So if you act as though sick is just the opposite of healthy, actually sick is the absence of health. It's the absence of health. And if you look at this illness wellness continuum, this is actually a better description of how your health works. So we're all on this health continuum. And so you want to ask yourself, where are you on this health continuum, right? So mentally just put a place marker of where you think you are right now, and understand that the left-hand side is where people are moving towards premature death. The right-hand side is where people are moving towards robust health. The middle, that neutral point, that's the not sick zone. Right? So remember, this is dynamic, it's fluid, it's always changing, it's never static. Everybody's going to be moving in one direction or the other, either away from or towards health. And when you start to move away from health, you're going to have signs and then symptoms and then disability as you continue to move further and further away from health. So right now, which way are you moving? Ask yourself that question. Mentally put an arrow where you are there. Think about that, and think about it that there's a velocity and a momentum to how fast we're moving in one direction or the other. So right now, you are only as healthy as your family. Where would your family be on this scale? Where would your kids be? Where would your parents be? Where would your kids say you are on this scale, right? If they were evaluating things, right? Ask these questions. And which way do you wish they were moving? Right? So this is important to recognize this, because if you're not doing anything to move yourself towards robust health, then by default in our culture pushes people towards premature death. That's what all these trends show us. That's what all the science and the research shows us, is that we are living in a culture that drives people towards early death. So let's talk about the difference between when we talk about this idea of immunocompromised, because that's who we're really concerned about. The people that are vulnerable that we're trying to protect are the immunocompromised. So I want to talk about the difference between this idea of contagious and dangerous, right? So contagiousness is not going to be dangerous to somebody with a robust immune system, but it is going to be dangerous to someone who's immunocompromised. So what you should be asking is, what do I need to do to make sure that I am not immunocompromised, so that I am actually immune competent? That's what we all want to be, is immunocompetent. What do I need to start doing or stop doing to reduce my risk? And remember, we want to shift our focus from the strength of the virus to the strength of the host. So what does it mean? Well, when we think of this idea of immunocompromised and what does it mean, who actually is in that category of immunocompromised? So some examples would be, certainly there may be genetic disorders. There's a small percentage of the population that is born with this weird genetic disorder that makes them vulnerable, and that's what they have to struggle with this time around, right? So we recognize there are people that have that. But then there are also people that have pre-existing conditions. And we know that obesity would be one of those, heart disease, diabetes. Those are some of the examples of the pre-existing conditions that make people more vulnerable to, because they have weakened immune systems that come along with that. People that are undergoing treatments such as chemotherapy that is literally overriding their immune system and actually literally turning it down in order to receive the treatment that they're getting. And the elderly would be in that category as well, possibly, because the people that are at most risk seem to be the elderly. However, let's think of it this way. There certainly are very healthy, robust elderly that are cruising through this and are not the ones that are dying. So when we look at the elderly, we think of them as vulnerable. Please recognize it is the fact that they have spent the last 30 to 40 years living in a genetically incongruent lifestyle with a compounding effect and compounding sickness. So they have put themselves into that place, or I should even say our culture has put them into that place where they have not been living a healthy lifestyle, because our culture, again, by default, leads towards that. So again, recognize that. And when I show you this next slide, I want you to understand this. You don't get sick, you do sick. You don't get sick, you do sick. It's the lifestyle choices that you're making that are going to ultimately determine if you're going to get sick or not, right? So we don't get sick, we do sick. And the same thing, I want this to be empowering to you. The same thing is true that you don't get healthy, you do healthy, right? And so the elderly that are vulnerable are the ones that have been doing sick for many, many years, right? Do you see that? And again, our culture, if you live by default, is doing sick. And we can see it in all of our studies and the trends, right? So that is a really, I mean, I want you to write that one down. You don't get sick, you do sick. If you're trying to avoid the germ, right, that's the idea of, oh no, I don't want to get sick from the germ. But if you have a robust immune system, you won't get sick from the germ. You will be able to handle it. Now, people are curious about, what are those acorns doing on the screen there? What's that about? Well, let me ask you this. What does an acorn become, right? Does it become an orange tree or an elm tree? No, it becomes an oak tree. Sometimes or every time. Every time, the oak tree is what the acorn is going to become, right? Every single time. Not going to become a different thing, right? Okay, so let's say that I scoop up those acorns and I toss them over into the corner of the studio here. How long is it going to take for those acorns to become oak trees? Right? Never. They're never going to become an oak tree if they just sit in the corner on the floor over there. Why is that? Because they need something in order to develop and grow into the oak tree. They need soil, they need sun, right? They need rain, right? It's the environment that will allow them to express their potential, right? So the seed, the acorn, is an opportunist looking for the right environment. If the acorns landed on fertile soil, okay, then they're ready to go for it, right? So the seed is simply the potential. And that is true for our own immune system, the potential we have to be robust. It's also true for a virus. A virus is like a seed looking for fertile ground that it can then become robust in. And if it becomes more robust than the fertile ground that it's in, then it wins, right? So it's not about the strength of the virus. It's not about the strength of the seed. It's about the strength of the host. Are you a fertile ground for that virus to grow in? Or are you robust and strong where it's like it's just landing on the floor, can't do anything because your system is so robust and strong? So the idea of us trying to avoid viruses and germs, you can't avoid them. They're everywhere all the time. We are actually designed to be an environment that is filled with viruses and germs. And actually being robust means that we can even thrive in that environment. Germs are everywhere. If you looked under a microscope at all the surfaces you touch, or your spouse who you kiss, like if you look under a microscope, you're going to see so many germs you would never kiss them again, right? So we shouldn't be spending our energy trying to avoid germs. We should be spending our energy not becoming the soil for them, right? That is the key. And so when we think of this idea of how do we get stronger, We have to just keep moving towards health. That's how we get our immune system stronger. So the stronger and more robust our health is, that means the more immunocompetent we are. And the weaker our health gets as we move away from health towards premature death, we're moving towards more and more immunocompromise. So I want to share the 5 areas for you to focus on. And 4 of these are going to be things that will impact your health, but one of them is what controls your health. So I'm curious which one you think is the most important, right? Okay, so here we go. Now recognize too, who knows what kryptonite is, right? Kryptonite is, if we go back to our superhero analogy, right? What does kryptonite do to Superman, right? It weakens him. It weakens him. And so what is it that is the kryptonite for our immune system? What is it that weakens our immune system? There is a thing that is that. Stress. Stress equals kryptonite for our immune system. And the stress that's basically comes from bad lifestyle choices that are what are creating stress. So, do you think that stress affects your health, right? Everybody pretty much, we're in agreement on that. And where is that stress coming from? Well, it comes from a number of sources, and all of those different sources, whether it's a bad diet, a sedentary lifestyle, right? It's going to impact our superpowers, which is our immune system, right? It's going to create immunocompromise. So what happens when we're stressed? Let's look closely at this here. Our blood pressure goes up, our heart rate goes up, our muscle tone goes up, we're ready to fight. Our digestion slows down because that's not a time to, it's not time to eat lunch when a tiger is racing after you. Our reproduction slows down. Again, not a good time to make babies when we are being chased by a tiger. Our serotonin levels go down, not a good time to sleep. Our sensory systems go up, hyper alert. Fear and anxiety goes up, again, at a hyper level because we need to survive the next moment. Our insulin sensitivity is downregulated, so we're going to produce more and more insulin. And our blood sugar is going to go up because we want that blood sugar in the bloodstream to be able to feed and fuel the muscles to be able to keep running. We're going to decrease our HDLs, our high density lipoproteins. We're going to increase our LDLs, our low density lipoproteins, and that's going to make things upside down. So our high density, our HDLs are our good ones, our LDLs are the bad ones, those go upside down. Our cholesterol goes up. We actually use cholesterol to heal wounds, to heal tissue that gets wounded. So we want it up, ready to heal in case the tiger actually wounds us. And the same reason why our clotting factors go up when we're stressed. And our immune response is down regulated. And that's because our immune system costs an enormous amount of energy to run. So when we are facing the tiger, we want to put all our resources into fight or flight, not into the immune system. We'll need that immune system once we escape from the tiger. But right now, while the tiger is chasing us, we downregulate that immune response. Now recognize that everything that I've described here is a healthy response. This is a superpower that we're able to do this, right? This is what saves our life when a tiger is chasing us. It's an adaptive physiology, and it puts us into a sympathetic stress state in order to achieve all of this. However, if this persists, then this is what's going to cause immunocompromise, right? So what are the sources of stress? Check it out here. It's coming at us in 3 dimensions. So it's comes from every angle. How many people here feel like modern life is unnaturally stressful? Even a couple of years ago, was modern life already stressful? Yes. In the last year, 10x the amount of emotional, mental stress we've had. It has affected us physically, mental, emotionally, and chemically. And we are more stressed today than we have ever been. So it comes at us from 3 dimensions: thoughts, toxins, and traumas. And, I actually, when this first happened last year, I decided that I really wanted to do what I could to help our community. And so I actually invited frontline healthcare workers to come in and receive care on me, because I really wanted to make sure we were keeping them as healthy as possible so they could do their work on the front line. And what people responded to, I was just amazing. Some of the comments they made is they were amazed that as they were getting chiropractic care, that they didn't have the levels of anxiety that they thought they usually would have had in those scenarios. Another frontline worker, she had back pain, and that was going to interfere with her ability to do her job. And she was able to actually heal that up and be strong in her position. Another frontline worker, she was having neck pain, and she realized it was because of all the awkward postures she had to be in with physical distancing and wearing all the PPE equipment, and that it was just not a natural way for her to be interacting with patients. It was actually causing neck pain, which would then interfere with her ability to do her job well. So I was so happy to be able to help folks that were right on the front line and help them to stay strong in their bodies and in their health so they could continue to do the work that they were passionate about. So what are the things that we need to stop doing? What are the things we need to start doing? I kind of like that idea of a traffic light where red is stop, green is go. Sometimes there are things that we just need to slow down on. Sometimes there are things we just need to stop. So if we think of mindset, our thought life, what are the things we need to stop doing if we're going to really maximize our immune system? Well, limited thinking would be one thing. Worry, holding grudges, these are all things that actually will stress your immune system. So being able to actually recognize that they actually did a study that showed that people that were stressed were more susceptible to the common cold. And one of the viruses they were looking at was the common cold coronavirus. And it literally showed without a doubt that the people that were more stressed were the ones that actually became infectious and symptomatic with the cold. So things like worrying about the future, regretting the past, right? Our brains work best in present time. But when we're worried about something, we're in the future. But our brain will act like it's happening right now. When we are regretting things from the past that have already gone by, if we have old stresses that are still gnawing away at us, our brain again interprets that as that's happening right now. And so we are recreating tigers in our life, even though there's none really right in front of us, we're recreating them with our thoughts. And so if we recognize that and start to make those changes and take control of our thinking, start to choose our thoughts. I want to show you what are the things that are going to cover ground the fastest with our mindset. So if we start vision casting, it's one of the fastest ways to shift. You actually do have a lot of control over your thoughts. So humans literally are we're the only species that can take a bad situation and actually with our mind, turn it into a good situation. And so that's with vision casting. So, as I study health and what are the best practices, this is definitely one of the factors. And so I want you to understand the more clear you are with the vision that you want to create, it literally will boost your immune system. And one of the things too is looking at alignment. So when we are in a situation where our value system is being violated, that we're not living with our values and things are out of alignment with our values, there's incongruencies and inconsistencies, that leads to destruction. That leads to more and more stress. So getting clear about what your values are and then living by them and being in alignment with what is important to you is actually going to strengthen your immune system. One of the fastest ways to turn the stress switch off is with gratitude. They actually put electrical sensors on the brains of people. They had them in an experiment where they were showing them stressful images, and then they instructed them to think about things they were grateful for. And they tried lots of different positive thinking kinds of things, but whenever they went to gratitude, that was the fastest way to turn the stress switch off. So I always kind of keep in the back of my mind, what are the things that I'm grateful for? And if I am stressed about something, the first thing I try to do is think about what am I actually grateful for in this exact situation? And if I can't find that, I just go to what are my default things that I'm just always grateful for that. So going to gratitude is a key thing here. And so this is really important to just start focusing your attention on the things you want to create with as crystal clear an image as possible, being in alignment with your values, and being in a state of gratitude. Sleep. We want to stop sleep procrastination, right? Here's what we find. Human beings, tell me who's guilty here, right? The sun goes down and now it's time for you to start the second half of your day, right? Well, our ancestors, of course, when the sun goes down, it's time to go to sleep. So I recommend best practices are going to be an e-fast, meaning that before you go to bed, you're going to sign off from all the electronic devices, sign off from that screen time. Ideal is going to be a couple of hours before bed, no screens coming in with the blue light and that stimulation that tanks our melatonin, our sleep hormone. So making sure that you have that e-fast as a regular rhythm is a very important thing. And even to have it as a whole culture in the house, that we all just turn off our screens a couple hours before bed. That's the best practice. And at the very least, 30 minutes before bed, at the very least, right? But best practice is going to be, 90 minutes to a couple hours. Watch out for that sleep procrastination, right? We actually are the only species on the planet that voluntarily doesn't get enough sleep, right? No other species does that. Recognize that, right? And so sleep really is so important. It should really trump everything. And if you're talking about your immune system, really important. So one of the things that the studies have shown is that the length of time that you sleep actually is very important. That in fact, healing will happen after 5.5 hours of sleep, up to 7 or 8 hours of sleep. So those last few hours are where the most healing happens. It's where the most cell growth and cell development happens. So getting a good night's sleep, where the good 8 hours, heading towards 8 to 9 hours of sleep is the ideal. Now, what happens if you lay your head down and you are just thinking, and you're in a stress state? I like to use the 4-2-1 rule. The 4-2-1 rule is, again, I'm going to use gratitude. So first I think of 4 things that I'm grateful for. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes by the time I'm on the third one, I'm already falling asleep. So I shift my mind into what am I grateful for? And I go through 4 things. If I'm still awake then, the next 2 things I think of are, what are the 2 things that I just love? I love these things. Maybe it's just, I love my cozy bed. That could be what it is. Whatever it is for you, 4 things you're grateful for, 2 things that you love, and 1 thing that you'd like a little help with. Something you're struggling with, a challenge. Maybe it was the thing that was keeping you awake, right? 4-2-1, think of what are you grateful for? What do you love? And what do you need a little help with? And just kind of offer that up. We always said in our household, let the celestial civil servants take care of this for you, right? Yeah, get a little help from the chaps, right? That's what we say. So just offer it up, just surrender. I need help with this, and let yourself just then drift off to sleep. We also know that alcohol is going to interrupt with good, deep, healthy sleep. So some people try to use alcohol to get to sleep, but over and over, the research shows that that actually is going to interrupt with good quality sleep. All right, so that's what we should stop doing with sleep. What do we need to start doing? Again, heading for that 8 hours of sleep, making sure your room is a sleep sanctuary. So no screens in the bedroom, right? No screens in the bedroom. If your phone's in there with you, it's on airplane mode, right? So that, and no lights, no little lights everywhere, because that's going to actually stimulate the pineal gland. It's going to make your body think that, it's more daylight. So just really dark, a little cooler room, like about 60 degrees is actually optimum for the best sleep, right? Just make that room a sleep sanctuary, right? And then the sleep surface, right? A lot of chiropractors get that question, like, what's the best surface to sleep on? And it's going to be one that's going to be taking care of your spine. So you want to have a good curve behind your neck and a good curve behind your low back when you're sleeping. So make sure you have a surface that's going to support those curves. All right, diet style is next. What are the toxic foods we need to stop eating? All of them. Any food that is toxic, stop doing it. Adding sugar to things, you want to stop that. Sugar actually will tank your immune system because it competes with vitamin C on the receptors. It uses the same receptor that the vitamin C needs to use for that immune system cell. And if you have sugar, the body actually is going to prioritize the sugar because we use the sugar to feed our brain. And so if sugar is present and vitamin C is present, we actually will prefer the sugar, which then is going to tank the immune system. 1 teaspoon of sugar will tank the immune system for 45 minutes. So if you're concerned about immune compromise, just stop the sugar, the sugar that's added into things. Also, watch out for starving yourself. So some people, again, that struggle with their weight, they may think, I just am going to reduce the calories. And well, the next thing you know, if you're starving yourself, you lose all willpower and all control, and you're just going to go after the carbs. So we want to make sure that we are feeding ourselves with healthy foods, and don't go the route of trying to just, starve yourself in order to achieve your health goals. We actually go into, in May, we'll be doing a special workshop on how to get 15 pounds healthier in 15 weeks. So you can join us for that if that's a goal of yours. All right, what should we start doing? Hydration, so important. Hydration is so important. Our immune system needs us to be well hydrated in order to work properly. If we do not hydrate properly, our body has to figure out where is it going to get the fluid that it needs for transporting and moving everything. So we will actually increase histamine in order to create mucus. Mucus is our default. If we're not hydrated enough, our body is going to create mucus, and we do that through increasing histamine, which then drives inflammation. Paleo lifestyle, paleo diet style, right? Eating the way paleo man ate. I just think of that as the healthiest, cleanest way to eat, the way that our body was made genetically to eat. And so again, and we're going to go into a little more detail. We'll unpack that, what I mean by that. But also supplementation, I think, is key for our immune systems to be strong. And I want to just show you which ones I'm talking about there. So when we talk about paleo lifestyle, the paleo correct lifestyle is going to be unlimited vegetables, abundant lean natural meats, some fruits, nuts, and seeds, and very much limited in starches and no sugar, right? Think of paleo man, that we wouldn't have had that cane sugar around to put on everything. We might have come in contact with some honey now and then, right? But we would not have had the levels of sugar that we have now. So this is the way to move towards as many vegetables as you want, abundantly natural meats, some fruits, nuts, and seeds. Really watch the starches and the sugars, because that's going to undermine you. Again, it's just part of an overall lifestyle. It's just one of the components. So they all work together synergistically. You have to be doing all of these things, just like that acorn needs to have the water and the soil and the sun. It needs all three to grow. And our bodies, our immune systems, and the health of our bodies need all of these things, the sleep, the mental state, our diet style. Now, supplementation, I do think, is important. And that's because we know that 40,000 years ago, the soils that our food was grown in were completely different than what we have as soils today. So our foods are actually deplete of the kinds of minerals and enzymes that we would have had in the past. And so the easiest way for us to reconcile that is just to take some supplements. And if you're thinking about what specifically are the supplements that really help our immune system stay strong, the research is there. We already know what these are for most people. And so vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, and I like to always have vitamin K with the vitamin D. They work synergistically so that the vitamin D is really robust for us. Selenium is so important for the immune system. Zinc is so important. Quercetin, also important. Probiotics, very key. Fish oil, omega-3 oils are very important. Iodine, and then also there's a product called Ion Biome, which helps to restore a leaky gut and heal that. And so if you struggle with a leaky gut, then your immune system is going to be affected by that. And so I like that product for a healthy, strong immune system as well. So I want to just unpack a couple things here so this is research-based. So for example, when we look at overall nutrition to deal, treat, or prevent COVID-19, there are so many studies that are shown over decades of studies that several essential nutrients, including vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, selenium, they all have antiviral properties. And so again, they have definitely found the studies that they're looking at, the majority of hospitalized individuals, they have deficiencies in these nutrients. And they know that severe pneumonia is one of the things that, of course, creates the terrible outcomes with COVID-19. And again, it depletes a lot of the body's essential nutrients. So Acute nutritional deficiencies will make COVID-19 more lethal, and chronic nutritional deficiencies also are going to weaken the system. So again, there have been trials that use vitamin C and vitamin D in high levels, but again, it needs to be used appropriately. And that actually has helped a lot of people prevent the severe outcomes and help them recover. Here's another one that just looks at, again, vitamin D appears to play a role in the COVID-19 mortality rates. The patients with severe deficiency were twice as likely to experience severe complications, including death. And in elderly nursing homes, check this out. The residents, when they were given high-dose vitamin D supplements within 1 month before or within 1 week after an outbreak, or if they were given the high-dose vitamin D supplements in a hospital, it resulted in significantly lower mortality rates. So we have the studies showing this. So wow, what if you just had optimum vitamin D and optimum vitamin C and optimum vitamin A, and all of these optimized, then you would be going in with your superpower intact and more robust. Quercetin, turns out, improves the zinc uptake, and zinc is one of the things that can really take care of the virus. So if it gets inside the cells, the zinc is what goes in there and destroys it. And so it drastically is improved in its uptake when quercetin is present. So that's fantastic, useful information for us. Now, we talked about the importance of the gut. So a leaky gut is going to make you more immunocompromised, more vulnerable. But we also know that the microbiome is so important. And so this was a study where they looked at the composition of the microbiota, the gut bugs, like what kind of bugs are there, actually impacts the severity and the dysfunctional immune responses in patients with COVID. And so they found that when they looked at the folks that had severe COVID disease, they actually looked at what kinds of microorganisms were in their gut. And there was a depletion of the ones that are very useful in being immunomodulators, meaning to modulate the immune system so it works properly. So if there was a depletion, these folks did not have a good response to COVID-19. They also found that if you have a dysbiotic gut microbiota, meaning you don't have a good healthy balance, that they actually found that it would persist after the disease. And that could be one of the factors for people that have an ongoing concern with the multi-system inflammation syndromes that can occur for some folks when they've cleared the virus. It's no longer a viral load, but their bodies are still in a very sick state. And they found that if they can bolster the beneficial gut species that are depleted with COVID-19, that could actually be a great tool that could help to manage their gut during and after COVID. Right, so wow, useful information for us there. One other thing I'll mention, the omega-3s have been found to, like the fish oils, they actually are very instrumental in modulating that over immune response that can happen with folks that have a severe outcome, where the immune system goes out of control and they have this, organ failure, and they have just this heightened inflammatory state instead of a resolution of that inflammation. So omega-3s have been found to be very useful for that, the fish oils. So I hope that you found that this was useful here. Now, if we look into movement, moving our bodies, right? When you think of a supplement, like a nutritional supplement as something that you can take to reconcile the fact that our soils have been depleted, when we think of our diet style, we know that we have to fuel, we have to provide the building blocks that our cells need. Well, I want you to think of movement as a nutrient, that it actually is a building block that every cell needs. Every cell needs movement. So we want to stop a sedentary lifestyle. We want to stop the traumas that are happening to our bodies, the physical stresses, the big traumas, avoiding them as much as possible. Nobody ever plans a big macro trauma like a car accident or a sports injury. Nobody plans for that. But we need to address it when it happens. But actually micro traumas are more of a problem, where we are having impact on our health. And so let me just introduce this idea here. There's the macro traumas, the big traumas that happen, and certainly that can jar our spine, which can impact our nervous system and impact our all of our body's functions. But micro traumas, again, are going to be the thing that is more of a culprit. And so this is, again, something that is we think of it as a small thing. How could this small thing be a problem? But actually it is a problem. And so we want to recognize that use of devices, whether it's laptops or smartphones, or even, just your desktop, we're sniffing the monitor, right? Those are things we call now collectively tech stress. And it arguably is one of the most serious health threats of the modern world. I am not joking about this. It really is. And I have seen it I've been in practice over 35 years, and the amount of stress in our nervous systems because of postural stress that is coming from what we're doing every single day, all day long, it is really a problem. And again, the next generation is in trouble because they are growing up with this. So when we have jarring of the spine or bad habits and poor posture, it can cause something called subluxations. So subluxations are when we misalign the vertebrae and it puts pressure on the nerves, and those nerves are then getting irritated. When they get irritated, we get inflammation, and our body will actually spasm the muscles around that joint in order to stop the movement of the joint, which is irritating the nerve. When that happens and the joint locks up, now the brain actually gets a signal that there's a problem because it's locked up, and we will actually increase stress hormone production that will then flood our whole body. So cortisol levels, when they go up, cortisol is the stress hormone, and it actually will alter immune function. So when we have these subluxations, these are stressors that cause the subluxations, the misalignments, the locking up in our spine. It starts to interfere with the nerve supply, and it actually drives inflammation. And so when we think of our spine, I want you to think of it as a suit of armor, right? We have our skull, which is the helmet that protects our brain, but we have this spinal column, which is surrounding and protecting our spinal cord. Our spinal cord is the conduit that is carrying the messages from the brain down the back, but then there are the branches that come out from between the bones that are the nerve roots that carry the messages from the brain to every cell in our body. And as long as the messages get from the brain to the cells and back again without interference, you get to be healthy. So our spine is our lifeline, and it's so important in controlling the function of every cell in our body. So remember, we talked about that there were 5 things I wanted you to know, 4 things that impact your health, right? It's diet style, movement, sleep, and mindset. And 1 thing that controls our health, and that's our nervous system. Our nervous system is what controls our health. It controls every function in our body. So we see here, the brain sends the messages down the spinal cord out through the nerve roots to go to every cell. And every cell means all of our limbs, our muscles, our bones, but also every organ, including all of our immune organs, right? Did you know that all of our immune system cells are made in our bone marrow? So if we don't have a good nerve supply to our bone marrow, that could impair how our body is able to produce immune cells. Our spleen is an immune organ. Our lymph nodes are immune organs. Our thymus is an immune organ. So we have lots of immune organs around our body. And if the nerve supply to those immune organs is compromised, then those organs cannot function as well. If you add to that, if you think of, just take this in. When we think of our nervous system, what is the main organ that our nervous system is based on? It's our brain, right? Brain and spinal cord. When we think of our digestive system, what's the main organ? It's going to be our stomach and our intestines. When we think of our respiratory system, what's the main organ? It's our lungs, right? When we think of our circulatory system, what's that main organ? It's our heart, right? But when we think of our immune system, what's the main organ of the immune system? It's actually all over our body. Our immune system is all over. So we have to recognize that what is it that controls the immune system that's everywhere? It's going to be the nervous system is what's controlling that. And, our hormonal system also has an impact on that. So we really need to think of the immune system as the neuro, psycho, emotional, endocrine system, immune system, right? It's all of those things all linked together. It doesn't live in one place. It's all linked together. It's a system. And so it's a system that is impacted by ultimately the nervous system. The nervous system actually will decide whether to have the immune system turn on or turn off, whether it be upregulated or downregulated. So ultimately, we have to keep our nervous system as healthy as possible if we want to have a healthy immune system. But then we also have to feed that immune system with the building blocks that it needs, and we have to give it rest, and we have to give it movement, right? All of those things are so important. Now, when we look at what do our nerves do, well, they do control everything. And also our nerves are what feel pain. Many people will, as we talked about, they'll think of their health as either I'm sick or I'm not sick, right? I'm healthy or I'm sick. And when you're sick, you feel a symptom, and oftentimes that symptom is pain. But when we look at the nervous system's jobs, it's only 10% of the nervous system that is designed to feel pain, right? So the sensory nervous system, it deals with posture, pain, and hot and cold temperatures. And that means that just a subset of that is feeling pain. So the only time that when we feel pain, it's only 10% of the nervous system. The other 90% of the nervous system is running the function, running the muscles, running the organs, running posture, and so on. So if we are deciding what we're going to do based on pain, we're only going to be using 10% of our nervous system. And so how is it then that we can measure what's happening with the rest of our nervous system? In a moment, I'm going to show you what we do in our office to measure that. So when we are subluxated, it could actually put us into that stress response, again, which is okay short term, but not good long term, because then that starts to tank our immune system. And the thing that causes the stress response, right, is all the different stresses: how you eat, how you move, how you think, thoughts, toxins, and traumas. Stress is our kryptonite. It's what weakens our system. And so subluxations are our kryptonite as well, because they will weaken our system as well. So for movement, what do we want to start doing? We want to have exertion, right? We want to be panting and sweating. We want to have good ergonomics of how we're moving our bodies, right? So that tech stress we talk about with using devices, that means it's poor ergonomics when we're looking down all the time, poor ergonomics. So we want to get the ergonomics right. And then we also want to get our spines checked for subluxation. We want to take care of our spines. Now, here's a study that just came out just recently where they found that fitness actually had a big impact on COVID-19. And so they wanted to now take this concept and apply it. And I love this phrase they use. They said the current state of physical inactivity and COVID-19 is a tale of two pandemics. There's the pandemic of the virus, right? All the conversation about the strength of the virus. But the other pandemic is our unhealthiness, our sedentary lifestyle. That is a pandemic as well. Both of those things are happening as a parallel. And it is because we are so sedentary that this virus is actually getting the best of us. It also said that in this population they looked at, where the population were all people that had severe COVID-19 disease, and they all were obese in this population. They all were obese. However, what was interesting is that when they looked at their physical fitness, how much movement they had, the ones that actually were moving more than the others, even though they all were obese, 17% of them had a lower risk of hospitalization because 17% of them were moving more than the rest of them. And so they actually developed a whole program called Healthy Living for Pandemic Event Protection. They called it HL Pivot. And the goal was to improve global health to protect individuals from the risks associated with chronic disease and viral infections. I love it because it is my goal as well. I envision a world where the natural state is extraordinary health. How are we going to get there? One thing is we have to get people moving. So they talked about this impact of fitness versus fatness in COVID-19 prognosis. Love that. So we have to get moving. One of my favorite exercises for moving is the life extension exercises. You will love this, YWLT. So hands up in a Y position, stretching up to the sky, hold it for 20 seconds, down into the W position where your elbows go into your back pocket, hold that for 20 seconds, L is the elbows bent out to the side. Hold that for 20 seconds. And T is the arms outstretched to the side. Hold it for 20 seconds. So 20 seconds in each position, 1 round for every 2 hours that you are sitting, right? That's the rule. So I love this exercise. Now, then there's this curious example of Masha and Dasha. I don't know if you've ever heard of Masha and Dasha before, but man, when I heard about Masha and Dasha, it totally turned my world upside down. And this was when I was in college that I heard about it. Masha and Dasha were a set of Siamese twins that were born in the Soviet Union, and they were actually taken away from their mother at birth, and the mother was told that they had died, but they were taken into an institution where they were studied. I know it sounds awful, but we learned actually quite a bit from them, because what was interesting was that as they grew, if you can see this picture here, right, they were joined at the hips. And so they had their own separate, heads and torsos. They had separate spines that joined at the hips. And then one of them controlled one leg, the other one controlled the other leg. And they had, I think, a third leg off the back that didn't work so well. And you can see they had their own arms and so on. What was interesting was one of them was actually a little bit more bent off to the side than the other. And so they shared a bloodstream. So this is what's important. They actually shared a bloodstream. It means that anything that they encountered as far as like a virus or something like that, or whether if they got a cold or something like that, that virus would circulate through both of their bodies. What was interesting is that one of them got the measles and the other one didn't. Okay, go figure that. Take that in. One of them got the measles and one of them didn't. And yet that virus would have been circulating around both of their systems. One of them would get a cold, the other one wouldn't. How is that possible? If the virus is causing the illness and the virus is circulating through both, how is it possible that one could have that illness and the other one didn't? What was it that was different between the two of them? They each had their own central nervous system. And the one that was more bent over than the other, can you imagine how that might affect their spine? That was the one that actually was a bit more sickly, that like didn't actually recover as well, that got sick more often. Isn't that interesting? We learned so much from understanding this with Masha and Dasha. When will we ever have a chance to understand this, right? Because we always think the virus is what's causing the disease, but Masha and Dasha actually we have to question that. Is it that really the cause of the disease? And so I want you to come back to this idea of the seed. One of them had soil that was fertile for that virus, and the other one was more robust and didn't, right? Fascinating. So I want to share some stories with you of people in the practice. There's this one woman, and she had chronic sinus infections. She started in the practice in 2016. She came in because she has headaches and neck pain. But what we discovered is that she's Elaine. She also had chronic sinus infections, allergies, asthma, eczema, right? You've seen that this is immune system function that's being affected, right? And then each year, as she was under care, she had incorporated more and more lifestyle changes. So she was making healthier choices. And then in 2018, out of nowhere, she got idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura. And it's something where your platelets get depleted. And once we identified it, within a few months, everything normalized. We kept getting her adjusted, and we also used some particular nutritional supplements. And then she normalized after a few months, and she remained stable. Now, I don't know if you know about this, but I bring it up because there was a doctor in Florida who had the COVID vaccine, one of the new COVID vaccines. And within a couple of weeks, he suddenly developed this thrombocytopenia, where his platelets went to zero, and he actually died. So I think they're still researching what happened in that situation, how the vaccine could have caused that. But I thought it was so interesting to know that, here we have somebody in the practice that possibly could have been vulnerable to that as well. But again, she's been doing everything to optimize her function of her health, including her immune system. By 2019, she commented that her sinuses were the clearest it had ever been. and even had the best pollen season ever. She was able to do yard work. She had plenty of stamina. And even February 2020, she was breathing the best that she ever has been. So again, she's somebody that started under care. We did a full analysis of what was happening in her nervous system, what were her challenges, what could be causing her health concerns. And we did scans of her nervous system so that we can identify where her subluxation patterns were, where the interferences were in her nervous system. And then we got her into a program of care. She followed all of our recommendations of making the changes in her lifestyle, of staying strong with her rhythm of her adjustments, and of adding in exercises and breaking the bad habits. And this is the kind of outcome that she had, where she has come out of this with a much more robust immune system because of the work she did of following the recommendations. I have other seniors, right? We think of seniors as the ones that are vulnerable, but actually in our practice, we have folks that are talking about they didn't get any cold or flu, even with lots of travel. And again, this was before COVID. Those folks that do a lot, that have done a lot of travel, what they noticed was when they were under regular chiropractic care and following all of their protocols with their nutrition and their sleep and following all the recommendations, that they literally didn't even get sick anymore, even with all the travel that they did. And actually even noticed that their allergies went away as well. So again, that robustness is possible, but we first just need to start by seeing where are the subluxations and how would you even know if you have subluxations? So if you're listening to this and you're curious, I wonder if I have subluxations. Well, when you come into the practice, one of the things we do first is we feel the spine. We palpate the spine to feel the motion of the spine. Are there any places that are spasmed, where it's locked down because of subluxations, where the vertebrae are misaligned, putting pressure on the nerves? We look at posture as the window to the spine. We do a thorough posture analysis. We may also get some x-rays to look at the spine, and even instrumentation where we're actually scanning the nervous system. So I want to show you this. Here is an example of one of the scans that we use. It's called the thermal scan, and it really measures the nerve supply to the organs. And so we know what the map of the nervous system is. If you think of this as a fuse box, and all the nerves that come out at different levels are going to certain organ systems, the same way the wires that come out of the fuse box are going to certain rooms in the house, right? We know where those nerves are going and what organs they may be affecting. And so what we want is a healthy normal where it's all clear. But if we scan somebody and we see the colors showing up, that's a sign that there's stress in the nervous system there. And then we can see what organs are being affected. So for this person, their liver might be affected, their stomach, their intestines, their pancreas, their spleen might be affected. That's an immune organ. Their adrenals, right? If their ability to manage stress might be affected. And even their bowels. So we talked about how important gut health is. So that could be affecting things. So we can scan somebody and see exactly what organs are being affected. And then over time, we continue to rescan so we can literally see their system getting healthier and healthier. And then we know functionally, not just based on how they feel, but functionally, we can see that their nervous system is actually getting healthier. So if you are curious, either because you have been under chiropractic care before and you want to get back into care, or you've been scanned before but never got a start with it, or you know somebody, maybe you're under care right now with us, but you know people that are curious, I would like to just welcome you to come right back into the practice, or refer your friends and family in, or you yourself in, and let's see how we can help you. And we would start by sitting down together, looking at what your challenges are, how it's affecting your health, what your goals are, where you want to get with your health, what concerns do you have? Is it your immune system you're concerned about? Is it other things, digestive system, circulatory system? What systems are you concerned about? Are you having pain? We're going to do an analysis then based on that, where we're going to look closely at what is happening in your nervous system. What scans do we need to do to evaluate what's going on? And then we'll do an assessment and we'll come up with a recommendation for you. If it does look like we can help, then we'll make a recommendation of how we can help to help you reach the goals that you have. So we'll sit down together and come up with a plan, and then we just have to implement the plan. So, what does it take to do this? It's simple. We just start by scheduling a consultation together so we can figure out what's going on. So if you would like to come in for that, the usual cost for that is $210. But for those of you that are watching this webinar, we'd love to give you a discount, just break down the barriers to that, because we know when we talked about what are the different reasons of why the health of our country and our world has tanked, and we talked about loss of responsibility and the wrong definitions of health, right? Redefining what health is. The third reason, which is the most important, is procrastination. People that say, I'll get to it, and then they never get to it. And then we know, months go by, years go by, and they keep meaning to, but they never did. Procrastination is the thief of health. So action is where the power is, right? We know knowledge is power, but action on that knowledge, that's the key. So for those of you that want to come in, we actually have a special where we're going to offer it for $47. I got to hydrate here. I've been talking a lot. So we're happy to offer it to you for $47 to come in so we can do a full workup. We can find out exactly what's going on. And, many people ask me, well, what about my friends and family? They have concerns too. So of course they're invited in for this as well. As we said, you're only as healthy as your family is healthy. So please feel free to reach out for them as well. So if you would like to take us up on this, then we would love to see you. I'll ask you to just send us a message by text. You can send it to our office number. It's 985-9850, 802-985-9850. If you just text in bulletproof, then we'll know that you're interested in setting a time where we can start with just a simple conversation on the phone for 10 minutes just to check in. Or if you're ready to get scheduled right away, then of course, just let them know and we can get you scheduled and put you in my schedule. And then we can really investigate exactly what's going on for you and how we can help. So I want to leave you with this last story. I have some friends and it's an amazing story really they had a tradition where anytime that there was a birthday, however many years you would have that many candles, but that meant that you had that many wishes. And so one year the dad had turned 40 years old. So he had 40 wishes and they would just be so imaginative of, oh, let's go on a safari. And I wish we could go and go diving. And I wish we could go, do this and that. And so he had 40 different things that he wished that he could do. And they just had so much fun coming up with the ideas for it. Well, a year later, when he was 41, he had one wish. And that was because he had gotten cancer. And his one wish was that he could be healthy again. So I want you to just take that in, that our health, it's our most important asset that we have. And without our health, what else do we have? It affects every part of our life. So of course, the best time to get healthy is now, right? So get yourself back on track. If I can help with that, I would love to do that. Just reach out to us and we're happy to do that. If I don't see you, I hope that you have taken some notes tonight and that you have some action steps that you're going to be taking. And I love to hear what those action steps are as well. So you can join us on our Facebook page and message us there. You can reach out to us. We'd love to see you and see if we can help as well. So thank you so much for your time and attention. And we're going to close up our workshop and have a great evening. Stay healthy. Remember, I envision a world where the natural state is extraordinary health. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.